Welcome to Wealth and Means. Advice dressed up like hard work.
Each week, we explore ideas that help you pause, reflect, and think more deeply about the opportunities all around you.
It's the perfect mix. A little information, a few stats, some real-world insights, and just enough deep talk to make you feel smarter before your second cup of coffee.
Today's episode is loaded. We've got what you didn't see in the news, your 5-minute jump start in Wake Up Ready, a knowledge bomb about generational wealth and growth, a fresh story in Humor Me, a spirited showdown on the value of college in the greater debate, and we'll wrap it all up with a brand new Invent Again segment.
A quick thank you to our sponsor, Nost Moments at nostmoments.io. Share your most precious memories. Share the Nost Moments. And now, what you didn't see in the news, the segment where we dig up the stories that didn't dominate your feed, but probably should have. Grab your coffee, or whatever performance-enhancing beverage gets you through the morning. Because while everyone was doom-scrolling the same 3 headlines, a few stories slipped under the radar and quietly shaped the week. First up, Starbucks. While people were arguing about holiday cup designs, thousands of baristas staged coordinated walkouts. The real story isn't the picket line, it's the generational subplot. Gen Z has basically decided unionizing is the new group project, except this time everyone actually shows up. They want stable hours, real bargaining, and a company that matches its progressive branding. Starbucks says they're negotiating. Workers say, "Great, show us." And if you wondered why your latte took 17 minutes, well, that's what negotiations taste like.
If the line felt longer, you weren't imagining it.
And speaking of things disappearing, let's talk Disney. Millions of cable viewers turned on their TVs this week and discovered ESPN, ABC, and a bunch of Disney channels had vanished without warning, like corporate Thanos snapped his fingers. It's another classic carriage war. Disney wants more money for sports and streaming. Cable providers say, "My guy, the ship is sinking. Stop charging cruise ship prices." Every blackout nudges another family to cut the cord entirely, which ironically worsens the exact revenue problem these companies are fighting about.
A self-inflicted wound, just with better branding.
Meanwhile, the quiet shock of the week came from WhatsApp Web. Traffic exploded 280%, 2.8 billion monthly visits. That's global infrastructure territory. Somehow, WhatsApp turned into everyone's new open tab. Group chats, customer service, small business storefronts, the family therapy channel, all in your browser. Meta won't say it out loud, but this is their email killer. Slack might want to keep one robot eye open. Next is a softer story, the final penny moment. A feel-good tale about someone saving their last penny from childhood and using it in a symbolic moment went viral. And honestly, it landed because it made the economy feel human for half a second. It's not about the penny. It's about the idea that small habits carry emotional weight, even if the coin itself is worth less than the time you spent reading about it. Then we had an unexpected hero this week, flat-back earrings. Yes, earrings. They're trending because dermatologists, parents, and TikTok influencers all suddenly agreed on one thing: maybe jewelry shouldn't stab you. Flat-backs reduce irritation, avoid infections, and don't rip your headphones off. It's the kind of micro-innovation that goes viral simply because comfort is undefeated. All right, biotech check-in. Savara popped after regulators signaled a clearer path for its rare lung disease drug. It's a one-drug company, the biotech version of putting all your chips on one square. So even a hint of FDA progress sends investors sprinting. For patients, it's genuine hope. For traders, it's a roller coaster. For Savara, it's oxygen.
I see what you did there.
From lungs to robots, Rictech Robotics rolled out new contracts for its service robots in hotels, restaurants, and medical facilities. Translation: the labor shortage has gotten so intense that robots are now the employee of the month. They don't call in sick, they don't unionize, and they don't take smoke breaks. We're watching automation shift from sci-fi oddity to, oh yeah, the robot brought my Caesar salad. And if robots weren't enough, we also got a splash of quantum anxiety, courtesy of BTQ Technologies. The company made noise with new partnerships for quantum-safe encryption. Basically, digital seatbelts for the day. Quantum computers start cracking passwords like pistachios. If they're right, they're protecting the internet. If they're wrong, well, back up your hard drive. In retail, ThreadUp posted better guidance and rode the momentum of the secondhand economy. Turns out consumers love saving money and the planet. And if the jacket comes with a sense of moral superiority, all the better. Circular fashion isn't a trend anymore, it's becoming an identity. Down in the deep ocean, literally, the metals companies surged after signs that deep-sea mining regulations might finally be moving closer to reality. TMC wants to vacuum up battery metals from the seafloor. Environmentalists are horrified. EV manufacturers are curious, and investors, they're staying hydrated. It's one of the rare business sectors where every headline feels like a setup for a Netflix documentary. Then there's Techogen, the quiet kid doing all his homework. The company saw renewed interest after stronger demand for its ultra-efficient heat and power systems. It's not flashy, but it's practical. And in energy markets, practical is the new hot. If the grid keeps wobbling, distributed systems like this may move from background actor to leading role. And finally, Airtel Africa. The telecom giant posted subscriber growth and big gains in mobile money revenue. Imagine if your phone plan, bank account, and digital wallet were all bundled into one service. That's daily life for tens of millions of customers across the continent. With currencies stabilizing and mobile usage climbing, Airtel is quietly becoming the backbone of a mobile-first economy. And that's what you didn't see in the news. The headlines might be loud, but the real stories, the ones shaping labor, tech, media, energy, and the future of money, are happening just below the surface. All right, folks, let's get you wake-up ready for the week ahead, because the markets aren't waiting for your coffee to cool down. We kick off Monday with a global data parade before Wall Street even finds parking. First stop, New York's Empire State Manufacturing Index. The key question: is U.S. factory activity stabilizing, or are we drifting toward winter sluggishness? The implication: a weak read puts pressure on cyclicals. Think industrials and energy-heavy names. Canada drops its CPI at 1:30 p.m. The question here: did inflation cool enough for the Bank of Canada to breathe? The implication: a hotter print shakes FX markets and hints at future tightening that spills over into U.S. yields. And globally, it's GDP palooza. Switzerland, Italy, Japan, Singapore, Thailand, basically the economic breakfast tray of the Eastern Hemisphere. The question: is global growth slowing in sync with the U.S., or are we all decelerating at different speeds? The implication: multinationals, especially in tech and consumer, trade on these divergences. And a quick reminder: Mondays are sneaky. Big U.S. companies love dropping press releases after the market close. Keep an eye out for surprise guidance changes before bed. Tuesday starts overnight with the Reserve Bank of Australia releasing meeting minutes. The question: is Australia done hiking for real, or do they just sound relaxed? The implication: commodity currencies can pop, metals traders pay attention. For the U.S., it's mostly quiet on the macro front, which usually means
corporate PR departments are plotting.
Exactly. Look for last-minute investor meetings, product drops, and sector updates that hit before Wednesday's fireworks. Meanwhile, the New Jersey League of Municipalities trade show kicks off, oddly influential for infrastructure, utilities, and construction plays. The question: which companies are courting state and local budgets? The implication: infrastructure ETFs sometimes catch a pulse after this one. Circle Wednesday in red, FOMC Minutes Day. The Federal Reserve drops the minutes from its October meeting, and the key question is: did they quietly debate another hike, or is the pivot still on the table? The implication: bond yields will move, and tech stocks will like it or hate it immediately. Then we get a side dish of Senate Commerce hearings with the Coast Guard Commandant. Not a market driver, unless you're in defense, shipbuilding, or maritime logistics. But the real star of the day: Nvidia earnings post-market. The question: is AI growth still exponential or just respectable? The implication: this can swing the Nasdaq all by itself. If Jensen Huang coughs, semiconductors move 2%. Energy watchers get their moment too with the EIA oil inventory report. The question: is supply tightening into winter? The implication: oil prices jump on even modest surprises. Thursday is macro heavy. If Monday was the appetizer and Wednesday the main course, Thursday is when the dessert tray crashes on the floor. We start with initial jobless claims. The question, is the labor market cooling or staying stubbornly tight? The implication, the Fed watches this like a hawk. Markets react instantly. Next up are the Philadelphia Fed Manufacturing Index and existing home sales. The big question, are factories and housing finally turning the corner? The implication, industrials, REITs, and regional banks all trade off this. Then the global spotlight shifts to China's central bank rate decision. The question, is Beijing injecting more stimulus or staying conservative? The implication, commodities, copper, iron ore, aluminum will feel it first. Trade shows continue, and energy resource earnings could pop in depending on the cycle. Friday is all about testing the vibe of the economy. First, flash PMIs from S&P Global. The question, are manufacturing and services expanding or slipping? The implication, this is the earliest read on December activity. Traders treat it like the market's mood ring. Then the University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Survey. The question, do people feel okay spending money for the holidays? The implication, retailers and consumer lending stocks take notice. Globally, the UK drops retail sales and Europe releases its own PMI snapshots. The question, is Europe stabilizing or flirting with stagnation again? The implication impacts the dollar, US exporters, and global risk appetite. And in LA, Automobility 2025 opens, where automakers reveal shiny EVs and startups promise things physics hasn't approved yet. Markets may be closed for the weekend, but New Zealand retail sales hit Sunday Asia time. Not a blockbuster, but it whispers clues about global consumer health. And of course, weekends are prime time for surprise M&A, especially in energy and tech, because CEOs love dropping news when traders can't fight back. And there you go, your week at a glance. From global inflation and central bank tea leaf reading to Nvidia's earnings and a parade of PMIs, you are now officially wake up ready. Stay sharp, keep your alerts on, and remember, markets don't sleep, but you should at least try. And that's how you wake up ready. Means what do you know?
Well, gather around for a moment because today's knowledge bomb is about economic mobility, the thing everybody thinks is collapsing, even as the data quietly whispers the opposite. You've heard the story. Millennials are doomed. Gen Z will never own homes, and the American dream is now just a dusty museum exhibit. But when you actually look at the numbers, 6 decades of them, the whole narrative falls apart. The Federal Reserve just ran one of the most exhaustive generational income studies in years. They controlled for inflation, household size, taxes, transfers, even differences in family structure. They lined up every generation at the same age, 36 to 40, so the comparison is apples to apples instead of apples to boomers. And here's the headline they bury in understated Fed speak. Every generation is better off than the one before it. Millennials at age 38 have about 18% higher real household income than Gen X did at the same age. Gen X had 16% over boomers, boomers had 27% over silents, and silents had 34% over the greatest generation. It's a staircase, not a cliff. Just a staircase whose steps get smaller over time. Now here's where the psychology kicks in. A lot of younger workers feel stuck, and for understandable reasons. But the data shows something surprising. Per hour, younger adults today earn more than past cohorts. They're just working fewer hours. So that feeling of I'm not getting ahead often isn't about money, it's about time. And when you factor in taxes and transfers, things like the EITC, SNAP, refundable credits, the picture gets even brighter. We rarely talk about it, but the modern tax and transfer system cushions the slowdown and turns what would look like stagnation into continued progress. Education tells another part of the story. Yes, college got more expensive. Yes, student debt is real, but the income payoff still overwhelmingly exceeds the cost. The researchers estimate that the extra cost for millennials is roughly 3 years of additional earnings, tiny in the context of a lifetime. And when you look within education groups, incomes rise across the board, even if the gains shrink in later generations. The story isn't college stopped paying, it's college still pays, just less dramatically than it used to. Race and gender add more nuance. Black Americans saw enormous gains mid-century, then slower progress in recent generations, though still positive. Women's earnings shot up across generations, while men's often flattened, which explains some of the cultural tension. Household incomes rose for both sexes, but individual earnings tell a more complicated emotional story. A lot of people feel behind because they're comparing their single paycheck to their parents' combined household income. Then there's the question of costs. Yes, housing is more expensive. Yes, healthcare is maddening. But these incomes are all inflation adjusted. And here's the twist most narratives miss. Younger adults today hold far more financial assets than earlier generations did at the same age. In 1989, only 39% of 35 to 44-year-olds owned stocks. Today, it's 64%. The path to wealth is shifting from home equity toward financial markets, and that alone changes the character of mobility. So what does all of this mean? It means the American dream isn't dead. It's just quieter and less cinematic than the version our parents marketed to us. Relative mobility, the rank you hold, has stalled. But absolute mobility, the actual standard of living you control, has continued to climb generation after generation. You might not leapfrog the entire distribution, but you're still outpacing your parents in real purchasing power. The story isn't decline. It's slow, steady advancement wrapped in frustration, higher expectations, and new forms of wealth. And if you understand that, if you can separate vibes from facts, you already have a clearer picture of economic progress than most pundits shouting online. That's your knowledge bomb for today. Progress is real, even if it's less glamorous. The American dream didn't vanish, it just changed clothes. How about a story wealth? Humor me.
Once upon a time, in the sweaty, cicada-loud summers of rural Mississippi, there lived a boy named Scott, who was, by every local metric, a complete failure at being a man. Couldn't hit a baseball, couldn't shoot a deer, once set his own pants on fire. The town elders shook their heads. That boy, they said, ain't got no potential. But Scott had two things going for him: a library card and a mother who believed in the American dream with the kind of fanaticism usually reserved for SEC football. Every night, she tucked him in with the reassurance that he could be anything: president, astronaut, rich, basically the trinity of American aspirations. Fast forward a couple decades. Scott grows up, moves to the big city, marries, has kids, discovers hair loss, back pain, the whole adulthood starter pack. And because ambition is a chronic condition, he decides he should also become a famous writer. Naturally, the motivational industrial complex welcomes him like he's a whale at a Vegas casino. $49.99 for a seminar telling you your destiny? Step right up, buddy. So now we're in a hotel ballroom in Jackson, lights dimmed to IKEA mood lighting. A sea of folding chairs filled with people clutching notebooks that scream "Dream Big" in fonts legally classified as aggressive. And on stage, a man wearing a shiny blazer and a headset mic, the universal uniform of someone who is absolutely about to disappoint you. He drags out his big reveal like he's announcing the Powerball numbers. I hold in my hand the key to success. And the crowd leans in like they're waiting for the Ark of the Covenant to open. One guy whispers, "Please be wizards." Another quietly hopes it's about welding. Then the speaker flips around this massive glitter-painted key, and on it, the words self-discipline. The entire room collectively exhales the emotional equivalent of bruh. Someone in the back stands up and yells, "I drove 3 hours for that!" Meanwhile, Scott, now going by his fancy author name Harrison Scott Key, is in the third row, laughing so hard he snorts. Because he's been chasing this key for 11 years. 11 years of writing at 4 a.m. before work, of revising novels while his toddlers used the pages as coloring books, of collecting 236 rejection letters that could wallpaper a small bathroom. Self-discipline, it turns out, is the fine print nobody reads on the American Dream contract. Then comes the night of the great value menu revelation. Scott, staring at the takeout menu of Life After Rejection number 237, notices it basically lists the 6 things everyone pretends they're balancing: family, friends, fun, fitness, financing, and the dream. Then the fine print, limit 3 per customer. And suddenly everything makes sense. You don't get a buffet, you get a combo meal. He chooses family, the dream, and fun, which he generously defines as not sobbing in the shower. Fitness gets sacrificed. Financing stays stable. Friends understand the disappearing act. And magically, he stops feeling like a failure at 6 things and starts feeling like a champion at 3. That's the moment adulthood clicks. It's not about maximizing, it's about choosing. Eventually, the book sells. The reviews are glowing. People ask for photos. He wins prizes. He flies home to Mississippi for Thanksgiving with the swagger of a man who's convinced his life now requires an author photo pose. And then Mom opens the door and with surgical precision deflates him. "Hey, Scott, you bring that little book you wrote?" That's when he realizes the true purpose of mothers in the American dream ecosystem. They are the gravitational force preventing your ego from floating off into orbit. She reads chapter 1, refuses to continue because it's got cussin' in it, and uses a grocery receipt as a bookmark. Peak Southern maternal energy. And that's the whole secret of Scott's happily ever after. Not that he achieved everything, but that he stopped trying to. He picked his 3. He lives them, he works, he parents. He eats biscuits with the enthusiasm of a man who knows fitness did not make the cut. And every Thanksgiving, he gets pulled back to earth by the one woman who will never call him Harrison Scott Key, national literary treasure, just Scott, the boy who once set his pants on fire. So what's the American dream? Not infinite potential. It's ordering your combo, accepting the sides, and walking out full. What's your pick 3 means?
That's easy. Wealth, family, friends, and the greater debate. The debate that should happen, but doesn't. So we make it happen anyway, through imagination, caffeine, and the stubborn belief that 2 adults can battle without flipping a table. Tonight's topic is deceptively simple but volatile enough to ruin a family group chat for a decade. Is college still worth it? Representing the yes, build the foundation, expand the pipeline, and please learn enough math to not blow up the satellite side, Kathy Warden. And arguing no, stop worshiping the diploma, unplug from the matrix, and go build something before the debt collectors find you, delivered with the calm menace of a man who enjoys detonating sacred cows, Peter Thiel. Let's begin. Kathy steps up first, and she has that measured, composed smile CEOs get right before they say something earnest and dangerous. Dangerous because it might actually be true. She starts with her JMU story, not as resume padding, but as an origin myth. She talks about wandering onto campus as a kid who didn't yet know which way her compass pointed. And she says college wasn't where she earned a degree. It was where she built a foundation, values, curiosity, a sense of direction, a discovery process, she calls it. The room softens a little. You can see people thinking about who they were at 18 and what they needed back then. Then Peter steps forward with the exact opposite energy, half smirk, half warning label. He doesn't raise his voice, he raises the stakes. He says this dream of college as self-discovery is a lovely story, but it's a story from a different century. Today, he says, college is less find yourself and more lose yourself in debt. It's a conformity engine stamping out future employees the way a factory stamps out parts. The system doesn't inspire imagination, it extinguishes it. Slowly, politely, with a student loan servicer smiling over your shoulder. Kathy doesn't blink. She goes right into the mobility argument, like she's been waiting for this moment. She says Peter's obsession with the Ivy League is blinding him. Most students aren't fighting their way into Harvard. They're fighting their way out of generational stagnation. Community colleges, state schools, regional universities. These aren't elitist institutions. They're lifelines. Associate's degrees get you into skilled jobs in 2 years. Bachelor's degrees put you on pathways to leadership and management. And the STEM shortage is not a myth, she says. It's physics. You cannot design satellites with hustle culture and TED Talks. Peter hears physics and gives the verbal equivalent of cracking his knuckles. He says, yes, the STEM shortage is real, but the cost structure is a crime scene. Tuition has gone vertical while the value curve has flattened. If college is the doorway, he asks, why is it locked behind six-figure debt? And then he drops the line that pulls the air out of the room. If college is such a guaranteed ticket to success, why does it look like a lifetime mortgage attached to a 4-year vacation brochure? That lands. Even Kathy nods. But she comes back with force. She says you can't solve a talent crisis by walking away from the institutions that produce talent. Education is an accelerator, not an ornament. Degrees open doors, real, solid, career-changing doors. And she says if we want more women, more first-generation students, more underrepresented groups in high-demand fields, we don't tear down the pipeline, we expand it. That's her knockout punch, college as a force for equity, not elitism. Peter absorbs the hit, then fires a clean counterpunch. He talks about Thiel Fellows building real companies before their peers finish sophomore year. He talks about the unbundling of education, online programs, apprenticeships, accelerators. You don't ignite innovation by standardizing it, he says. You ignite it by letting people experiment in the real world before the world teaches them to doubt themselves. And then he drops his bomb. College isn't the gateway to opportunity. It's the queue outside the gateway. The audience reacts the way an audience reacts when someone slices myth open with a sharp tool. And then they both do the unthinkable. They concede. Kathy goes first. She admits degrees alone aren't destiny. Employers need to hire for skills. The system must adapt or it will lose relevance. But structured learning, actual foundational learning, is irreplaceable in fields where small mistakes explode into large problems. Peter nods. He concedes that college works for certain paths, engineering, medicine, research. He admits many young adults need structure, community, accountability. But he won't budge on his core thesis. College is optional. Ambition is mandatory. Their closing arguments feel like two different visions of adulthood. Kathy closes with quiet authority. Education, she says, remains the strongest engine of upward mobility ever built. It prepares people not just for their first job, but for every reinvention that comes after. Peter closes like a man who has spent years poking sacred institutions with a sharpened stick. College isn't a disaster, he says. It's a bubble, and bubbles pop when people finally stop pretending. The future belongs to the builders, not the line waiters. And that, folks, is the greater debate. Two pros, two philosophies, two knockout blows each. Which truth wins? That depends on which version of yourself you trust with your future.
Kathy is amazing. Thanks for that, Means. Travel with me now, and let's invent again. The story begins in a burn ward in 1969, where a young scientist named Ioannis Giannis found himself pulled into a problem he never intended to study. He'd trained as a physical chemist. He'd built a career around polymers and mechanical engineering. But nothing in a textbook prepared him for the sight of children with burns so severe that surgeons had run out of skin to save them. Most people would have politely stepped aside and let the clinicians handle it. Giannis didn't. He asked a question that seemed almost unreasonable at the time. If skin can't regenerate on its own, could we help it remember how? That one question launched a collaboration with surgeon John Burke that became one of the most important scientific partnerships of the last half-century. They created a 2-layer material, on its face simple, almost crude, that changed everything. The bottom layer, a collagen and gag matrix inspired by the architecture of the skin's extracellular scaffolding, became a temporary home for the body's own cells. The top layer, a silicone sheet, kept infection and dehydration at bay, while the deeper work happened. What made their invention extraordinary wasn't that it protected burn wounds, it was that it rebuilt them, coaxing the body into generating real dermis instead of scar tissue. This wasn't coverage, it was regeneration. And when early trials showed that massively burned patients were surviving with new, pliable, functional skin, the medical world had to accept a reality that contradicted decades of dogma. Adult tissues, under the right conditions, can regenerate. Integra, the commercial version of their template, went on to become the first FDA-approved device to induce organ-level regeneration. But the ripple effects didn't stop there. The principles Giannis uncovered, How pore size, chemistry, and degradation rates influence healing became the intellectual backbone of the entire tissue engineering field. Cartilage scaffolds, bone graft matrices, even nerve conduits all trace some lineage back to that original insight. And speaking of nerves, Yannis's follow-on work in that space was equally bold. Using similar scaffold logic, he built tubular guides that helped severed peripheral nerves reconnect across gaps. That idea seeded modern nerve repair products and informs today's exploratory spinal cord scaffold trials. The concept is the same. If you design the structure correctly, cells will do the rest. Fast forward to today, and the relevance only grows. Severe burns are still common. Chronic wounds, especially in diabetics and aging populations, are rising. Complex reconstructions after cancer or trauma routinely depend on techniques derived from the original Yannis Burke playbook. Integra remains standard of care across dozens of countries because it solves the same brutal constraint it solved in 1981. When the body has no more skin to give, it provides a way forward. But the most important part of Yannis's legacy is the human one. His invention didn't just save patients, it preserved mobility, prevented disfigurement, and restored quality of life that traditional grafting could never match. It turned once fatal burns into survivable injuries and transformed if they live into how well they'll live. Ioannis Yannis passed away in 2025, but the world he helped create is still expanding. An entire medical frontier built on the idea that with the right scaffold in the right place, the body can rebuild what was lost. In a field where breakthroughs are often incremental, his was foundational. And the story keeps regenerating, just like the tissue he taught us to grow. And that's it for another episode of Wealth and Means, advice dressed up like hard work.
We hope you enjoyed the range from GPUs to generations, epidermis to employment, and pennies to WhatsApp.
Subscribe, rate, and share this episode. It helps more than you think.
We do this for you to help you have a better week, a sharper mind, and maybe even a longer attention span.
And a special thanks to our sponsor, Nost Moments, because the best investments are still your memories.
Until next time, stay curious.
Stay kind.
And keep compounding.